Welcome, everyone. This is a bit of a canter through the 40 years of history of the Engineers Trust, because this is a very significant year, being the year of the 40th anniversary. And I think it's significant that it was one of the first acts that the company set out to do and to establish a charitable trust. Nowadays, you would regard it as something that was not just optional but essential, because the criteria for being admitted as a livery company now requires at least £300,000 to be held in charitable funds for aspiring guilds or companies that are not yet full livery members, and £60,000 in general funds. At the time, the conditions were obviously not quite so onerous for us. Whether we were exceptional or not, I don't know. But our first assets of the trust were only £10 when it was established on the 4th of July 1984. And the first managing trustees were key individuals in the company: Peter Gadsden, the founding master, and Lord Mayor, Sir Dennis Rook, who was the first senior warden, and to go on to become a president of the Royal Academy of Engineering, amongst many other achievements with British Gas. Trevor Crocker was junior warden, active in consultancy, and Michael Leonard was the founding clerk, also well connected to the Royal Academy, well, what was then the Fellowship of Engineering in the 1980s as a clerk, and also had been secretary of the CEI for that. So all four very senior, very influential individuals. But they were starting with a very slim set of resources compared to how livery companies now, when they do become official livery companies, which is a very good signal that, of course, the livery movement regards philanthropy and charitable giving as fundamentally part of the ethos of every livery company. It has to be in our DNA to be wishing to give freely in support of the causes written up in our purposes. There's a page of the original trust deed. That's Peter Gadsden on the top, and Trevor Crocker immediately below him, and Sir Dennis Rook on the right of the image, 3 out of the 4 founding trustees. And they had their first meeting a few months later in December 1984. And one of the first actions that they took was to have 5k volunteered from the company to be transferred into the trust. It's about the equivalent of £15,000 today. So a fairly modest amount by current standards, but still it provided the capital to allow the trust to begin to act in a way that was meaningful and had impact as far as it could with quite limited funds. What it did decide was not to treat this as an endowment and only spend the dividend from investments from that 5k, which would be quite a small sum. They decided right from the outset that they would be bolder than that, and they chose to have an upper limit of grants of half of what they'd received from the company that year, in anticipation that through other means the fund would grow through further donations. So that was quite bold, but it set a marker down that that's how they wished the fund to be operating. So they allowed up to 50% and finally decided on almost 50% of the funds transferred to be disbursed as grants in the first year. And here are the first beneficiaries. All modest amounts, but that was the start of where we got to now. And they chose to sort areas that they wished to fund into 5 categories on the right there. So you've got close connections to the city. I'm not quite sure what the special connection with St Catherine Cree Church Organ Fund was, but there must have been one. Certainly the Master's Charitable Fund was a feature of those early years, where the Master was given up to £500 to disperse to deserving causes at his or her sole discretion. And Ironbridge Museum Trust we have supported from the outset and still support today through a different vehicle. Education was another, medicine and health. There was another specific category that the founding trustees wanted to support. Poverty and disaster, notably through REDA, Register for Engineers for Disaster Relief. And advancing engineering at the foot there with a single donation to a lecture fund. Those are the very modest but still confidently impactful areas that the Trust supported in that first year when it had very few resources on which to draw. Next activity, of course, was for the trustees to find ways to allow the fund to grow and to garner contributions. And they did it in two broad directions with a third subsidiary. The first broad connection was to make use of the seniority of the members of the Worshipful Company of Engineers in their own circles. So it's no coincidence that Sir Dennis Rook, as being chairman of British Gas, that the very first corporate sponsorship was a British Gas award. And that was to fund 2 medals each year to engineering technicians who had deservedly earned a special recognition, which ran for some years. The year after that, I think it was William Barlow, who was another past president of the Royal Academy of Engineering. Bill Barlow wrote to some of the major corporations in which he had connections or leverage, and quite successfully managed to amass a reasonable sum of money in the course of that 12 months from the likes of GEC, Lucas, Central Electricity Generating Board, Babcock, Costain, BICC, which became Balfour Beatty largely, NEI, large crane manufacturers, and amongst many other things, and Thorn EMI. So the captains of British industry reached out into British industry and got support for the Engineers Trust at the outset. That's a good lesson for us today. Still talking about sponsorship, it's not new to the company. It's very much right from the outset. We've built up our resources with the support of sponsorship. And only British Gas initially attached any strings to that donation in terms of a named prize or a named award. The second was to appeal personally to all of the members of the company up to that time. And they were invited to enter into 4-year covenants or to make donations. And within a year, the company had received 80 individual covenants for the trust and 40 donations to the trust. And the third, less significant but still important area, especially in the numbers that they were talking about at the time, the sale of lapel badges, Christmas cards, tankards, shields, ties and coasters I've found in the old minutes of the company. I mentioned the British Gas Award, and I thought I'd highlight where we currently are with the full set of specific funds that have been established over the years. There are not too many of them, but they are a very, very significant part, amounting to more than half of the fund's resources now. So this is where either an individual or a company wants to allow the trust to make awards, sometimes in perpetuity, other times just as long as the fund lasts and is exhausted. I've listed there 7 of the principal ones. The British Gas Award Fund did get absorbed into the general fund at some point down the line with the consultation of Sir Dennis. The British Australian Bicentennial Award Fund was really Peter Gadsden's initiative. He had very, very close connections with Australia and was keen to encourage exchange of engineering researchers between Australia and the UK both ways. And that scheme ran until relatively recently, when the funds had got to such a stage that really there weren't enough to support another PhD student coming for a year into UK or vice versa going out to Australia. And it now is used partly to support the Lord Mayor's appeal, partly to support the annual donation that we still want to make to Ironbridge Museum Trust. But all the others are still running. Cadzow Smith Award, initially funded with about £50,000. Stevenson Award Fund, which is IMechE members, and it goes towards someone who's made a special effort in encouraging young engineers into mechanical engineering, or any branch of engineering really, but it was funded by mechanical engineers from an event which had a surplus and was topped up later, and that's why I've got a question mark against the initial funding. I think initially it was about £1,500, but it was quickly topped up to about £5,000. And then the Baroness Platt of Rittle Award, which came into the company through, again, a bit of a tortuous route, renaming another fund that the Engineering Council was aware of. And that's awarded to the outstanding incorporated engineer each year in the admissions at the Engineering Council. And then there's the Hawley Award Fund, one of our larger ones, which was established in memory of Fiona and Nicholas Hawley's name, but established really by Bob Hawley, who was a past master. And that is for an award for getting to net zero carbon. And then the largest of them all, the Leet bequest, David Leet, who wanted specifically to support research in production engineering, which the original trustees at the time had decided, well, that's a little bit narrow in the present day by the time the bequest became operative. And advanced manufacturing was also attached to the tag for the Leet bequest. And the original bequest from David Leet was very generously £463,000, set out with some strict conditions that he definitely wanted that to grow at least with inflation, if not better than, so that it was an in perpetuity award that could be made. And I'm pleased to say that since 2012 we've done a forensic exercise on that just to make sure. Pleased to say it has outperformed his aspirations as set down in the bequest, which is nicely reassuring to our investment policies over the years subsequently. Total value of restricted funds dedicated to those named awards is now just over £1 million. So we are good custodians of the intentions of the donors, I would take from that. This is the big picture of where we have got to with the fund over not the full extent from 1984, but from 1997, when it reached a present day value of £500,000. And it is quite an interesting story there about, generally, of course, if you take a very long-term view, reassuring that the fund has grown. It's had a few wobbles along the way, almost certainly mostly influenced by the performance of the markets for investment. So in the last 10 years, for example, you can see the pretty poor performance in 2018, which was typical of what happened everywhere. That was the global downturn in the stock market, badly hit the funds. And then even more recently in 2022, the combination of the trust budget and the lingering effect of the Ukraine war and energy costs had a bad impact on the stock market. And you can see that downward blip in 2022 for us as well. Partly recovered in 2023, I'm glad to say, but compounded by then quite high inflation. So the upturn in 2023 in actual funds was pretty much just sufficient to keep pace with inflation, which was running in, as recently as 2023 at 8.5%. So inflation is the enemy of investing funds. I'm glad to see that it has come down since then. But it has an impact. And you can see the upper line there is the funds at today's purchasing power, which is intended to take account of inflation that's taken place over that period as well. Again, looking back, it's reassuring too that there have been only those 2 years in recent times where the investments have had a downturn. Unfortunately, they've been large downturns. So if you look at the last 10 years or so, it's a fairly plateaued situation at the moment. but I'll be talking about that later. The big jump in 2011 in that graph is the LEAT bequest of 460,000, and then of course that continues to grow within itself, but it's restricted. The performance of the LEAT award has to be used for the LEAT award. I'm very pleased to say that we're adopting a different approach for the relaunch of the LEAT award, where we will be advertising it widely to reach out to individual students across the range of PhD students that will be studying in advanced manufacturing and or production engineering. Hopefully we'll get some good quality applications and be able to make the first of many awards under that scheme, in keeping with the donors' intentions. So that's it. So it's a good news story overall. The years we obviously have got far more funds at our disposal than back in the day, and it's grown with inflation, but also inevitably has to have suffered the slings and arrows of downturns in the market, totally outside our control due to global crashes. But we survive and we do our best, and in the long run, investing our funds in equities, which most of them are, is still historically and probably for the future likely to be the most fruitful. So assets now, as at the end of 2023, were 1.71 million compared to the £10 we began with 40 years ago. Not too bad. The pattern of income and expenditure was we had donations of 105,000. Good year for donations, thanks to one large donation. Investment performance was okay at £52,000, adding to the fund. No special legacies to report for last year. And expenditure was £112,000 in our charitable efforts, with some associated admin and governance and costs of investment management to come off as well. So we do operate a fairly aggressive policy of committing to give away a sum that in some years will be greater than the amounts that we receive. It wasn't last year, but if we don't have the level of donations that matched what we had last year, then it will be. But we do take a long-term view that growth is still deliverable by the company in the situation that it is. But we do need to rekindle a fire of a willingness to give so that we have got more donations and regular donations coming in and legacies. And this is what it's all about, really. It's making awards to groups of people like these wonderful people, most of them young, and they're all connected with and are in engineering in one shape or form, armed services, or in the professions in other ways. And we'll come on to a few examples of them in the next few slides. So if you remember the categories from the 1985 awards, we haven't changed dramatically, as we can't and we shouldn't be changing dramatically. We still have education as a key aim for our funded support. We have advancing engineering, where the awards are being made to those who have advanced engineering in a particular or a special way, or will be advancing engineering in the future if they're young people. And there's a category there of hardship relief and connections to the City of London. So I've put these two together in this, but the same four categories can be recognisably linked to the original group of categories. I suppose medicine and health would now be embedded within any of the awards for which that would apply. Think, for example, of the Mercia Award, which is for biomedical engineering. So we don't have a specific theme or category, nor is there a specific theme or category for that in the purposes that are written down in the trust deed. But that's the only tangible difference I can see from how the original trustees interpreted what they wanted to do with the Engineers Trust. But it's an impressive list. This is our awards portfolio, and here are some of our 2023 awardees. We can see there the Army Engineer Soldier of the Year, top left, Henry Adams. And below Henry, there's Julia Correa. Julia is a student at the University of Glasgow studying biomedical engineering, and she received the Mercia Award in 2023. And to her right is Jen McEwen. Jen is a teacher at Doonfoot School in Ayrshire. She won the Stevenson Award for the work that she's doing with young primary school children to encourage them to find out and about engineering and to treat engineering as a career route. And to her right, we see the children from Zidonda in Zambia celebrating their improved water supply that's led to the village. And this was delivered by the charity Just a Drop, who we've supported for 3 successive years, actually, in our Outreach Award, because they've had the most compelling case for impact with the £5,000 that's available under that particular award. And what a fantastic outcome to see the images that come back from those projects, which are quite simple, solidly based in engineering, because they're putting new and modern pumps into villages, and that improves health, of course, but it also frees up time for children to be educated, frees up time for women not to be walking long distances, carrying water back to the village. So it's a very liberating thing that we've supported in Africa. And also in 2023, you can see the Master then, Raymond Joyce, and Giles Keating, who's the senior trustee of the Tech for All charity, a legal charity, and our presenter, Warren East. And the winner, Gayatri Sundar Rajan, of the very first Innovation for All Award, which was established in association with Tech for All to allow us to give a £20,000 prize to the most deserving application that demonstrates the relief of hardship or poverty. And Gayatri's idea was part of our MPhil studies to develop a new container-based facility for remote areas in rural Africa to have not just generated power, but also to use that to have refrigeration incorporated within it, so that some of their goods that they need to get to market, their perishable goods, could be stored at the same time as energy was being also absorbed through solar power, etc. So brilliant idea, and we certainly are going to keep our eye on how that develops so that we can continue to tell the story. In the spirit of continuing to tell the story, I spotted this piece that was promoted by BAE Systems, and it was about one of our winners from 2023, Becky Mom, who won the Baroness Platt of Writtle Award. And BAE Systems has chosen to feature Becky prominently in their blogs that are aimed at potential future applicants. So Becky's story here as an aerodynamicist is being told. And later on in the same piece, she was asked to speak of her career highlights so far. She said, "There have been many highlights for me already in a relatively short space of time, but the most significant has to be winning the Baroness Platt of Writtle Award 2023. So that was great to see that endorsement and to see the image of Becky receiving her award at the 2023 awards dinner. And more of these narratives, more of these stories are what we hope to be able to tell in a more transparent way, tracking the successes of past award winners. The new website is far better for being able to display an interesting narrative of all of our award winners. So if you do go exploring into the charity navigation bar, please do have a look at those that have got links with individual award winner stories, because I think they're really quite compelling. They're taken from the awards booklet that gets produced expertly each year and then adapted for the website to have a visual and a narrative record of just why the individuals have deserved to win one of our prizes. More up to date, 2024. I've actually inadvertently, with Sam up in the top left, I've picked up the Army Engineer Soldier of the Year again. Should have really had a good look for the Navy and the RAF. We're very proud of the military affiliations that we support, and we have no less than 12 awards now at our awards dinner. And most of them are made in person, although inevitably some are or elsewhere on operations. So it's great to see the uniformed armed forces being represented so strongly. And in those, we do have a senior individual from one or other of the armed forces to make those awards, which adds to the cachet of those, which is fantastic. Again, we have a Just a Drop example on the right of that screen, a new water pump in a village in East Africa. And we see down in the middle at the foot, Alex. Alex was the Baroness Platt of Writtle Award winner last year. He couldn't be at the event. He was at the Antarctic because he joined the British Antarctic Survey and he was there. We saw a video of him on the night, and his wife came along to receive the award from Mark Wilde. And you can see the representative from Just a Drop up in the middle there, top. Down on the left, we see a young engineer from Arup who won the Water Engineering Award. And the eligibility for that is the best poster in a conference or speaker in a conference organised by the International Water Association. And I spotted that this year, which is after the award, one of the keynote speakers is Caroline, who won the award in the previous year. So I was very pleased to see that, and that was widely covered in the social media as well. More and more thinking I would like to have more structure around tracking down our previous award winners and what they achieve, especially those from further back. Because I can't help but think that there are some very influential people there now who've won awards from us within the last 40 years. I'd really like to know who they are. And if you want to help me with that, then I'll be also looking for volunteers. Another winner last year, the Holly Award this time for contribution to net zero carbon, happened to be University of Edinburgh. I had no idea about that until the night. But Dr. Francisco Garcia is a chemical engineer, and he deservedly won the Holly Award last year. And here we see an inaugural award. This was James Reed from Cranfield University, and he's the first winner of the award that is funded by AWE, and it's the AWE Defence Industry Early Careers Engineering Prize. And James was the first winner, so we look forward to that being a regular feature now. And the Mercia Award winner, which is for biomedical engineering, last year was Eleanor Griffin, the University of Exeter, and here you see Mark Wilde, next Chief Exec of HS2. And another example of our military awards, award winners, Captain Olivia Flaherty, Royal Signals, who won Army Engineer Officer of the Year 2024. And the presentation here being made by Air Vice Marshal Sean Harris. These are tremendous awards. In fact, the benefits we see also with some members flowing through to become members of the company were evident in the session that we've just had for prospective members, because one of the individuals piped up and said, I won an award 2 years ago, and it was Ben Monaghan who'd won Army Engineer Officer of the Year 2022. So he's now interested in potentially joining the company, and hope that he does. And Just a Drop Charity, the two images there combined, winners of the Outreach Award for 3 successive years. I don't think it's breaching too much of a confidence that there will be a different winner this coming year. But tremendous work and tremendous impact from what they do with engineering. Gayatri with our Innovation for All award in close up this time, and the Tech for All logo there to demonstrate the new model for quite a few of our awards, where we can administer awards and we can make the awards in a very high profile way, and potential partners recognise that. So if there are organisations out there who would like to make an award, substantial award, we will talk to them to see if there's a way of incorporating it into our portfolio at no cost to us. And another example of exactly that is in association with the Rochester Bridge Trust, the Phil Tyndall Memorial Medal for Mentoring. And Richard Brooks there, the first winner. and young engineers in association with the Royal Academy of Engineering. We get good press from the REng in what they're calling the REng Engineers Trust Young Engineer of the Year award. And here's the snapshot from their website to show that. And there are 5 each year that are selected. And here's another example. I'm not going to play this. It's on their website. You can see some of them talking about their experiences. We are a bit more conscious nowadays of looking at receiving due recognition for the support of the awards. And I think we're getting to that place with the Academy where everything that they have doubly badged in a fairly high profile way. And we fully fund these young engineers. We're in talks with them at the moment to tweak the awards so that we're doing something that's also in recognition of particular achievement, overcoming hardship, for example, and hopefully supporting younger groups. To be eligible, you have to be within 10 years of your graduation. And the MacRobert Award for Engineering, of course, I hope you all know, we've supported that now for 9 years, and it is probably the 10th this year. It's probably our highest profile association. The Worshipful Company of Engineers features prominently, although we don't fund the majority. In this case, we contribute to it, but it's still in a significant way. And there's another example of the branding and the badging and the benefits that we get from that right below the MacRobert and the Royal Academy of Engineering. And the outreach from the publicity machine that is attached to the MacRobert Award, and the Academy funds that, is quite impressive, because last year the media stats showed that 448 million people had been reached from the campaign over the months. The last little bit I want to talk about is to make us think a little bit more. And I read a book called Let It Go by Dame Steve Shirley. And Steve is an engineer. She's 91 now, and she's an IT engineer. She's been a strong supporter of the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists. And she was their nomination for the first inductees to the City of London Engineering Hall of Fame. And in her life, she's given away upwards of £65 million. And she's written a book about why people should give. And for instance, she's compared the patterns of philanthropy from the UK, which is good in European terms. The highest average Britain gave £225 a year in the year that she got the statistics for it, a few years ago now. But at that time, the average US citizen gave £600 a year, so much more. The top 30 in the UK gave away up 1.2% of their wealth. The top 30 in the USA were giving away 13% of their wealth. So there was a different culture and a different ethos across the pond. And she looked into that and tried to understand that better and identify some of the drivers for that. And her conclusions were, we needed to inculcate a culture that believing that giving is a pleasure, not a duty. And the testaments from major donors, they're not about altruism. They're about how rewarding it has been for them to be supporting something that's worthwhile. And something she said that struck home with me is that money isn't lost if someone else has it. It is realizing its potential. And she goes on further to say, wealth as numbers on a bank statement transformed into wealth that enriches the world. Nice way to put it. And as a result, enriches the donor, enriches you. She also said, the older you get, the more you realize that the things that really matter in life are not the material things. And her story is just phenomenal. She started with nothing. She was a kinder transport refugee and became an entrepreneur against the odds, and then became a philanthropist and a figurehead and a role model. And she thought too that there was an issue of, in Britain, we don't like to talk about money, whereas in the USA people are much more open and proud of giving. They feel comfortable about enthusing about donations and the projects they support. And they accept that recognition goes hand in hand with pride in encouraging philanthropy. And we've got something coming up in 10 years' time. We've just celebrated our 40th birthday of the company, and this is the 40th birthday year of the Trust. But it's only 10 years away for the 50th. That's going to be a much more significant event. So extraordinary gestures ought to be being thought about, but to do so, that would require additional funds. We have announced a 50th anniversary appeal that will run for the next 10 years to provide capital to allow something special to happen in 10 years' time. And for both the company and the trust, one hopes. So whether it's a new award, an initiative, or enhancing the value of some existing awards, that's up to teams that are leading the company and the trust closer to then to decide. Examples could be, for instance, an engineering Mansion House scholarship. The Mansion House scholarships are supported by us, but the recipients are almost invariably legal, insurance, finance. Wouldn't it be quite nice if we had one dedicated to engineering? To do so, we would need a sum of money that was dedicated endowment for that. That might be a worthwhile aspiration. Maybe there's a specific project that can be thought of for relief of hardship or towards net zero emissions. Maybe a competition as well that could have a substantial prize fund attached to it, although we're in rich territory there with the Earthshot prize being £1 million and the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering being £500,000 now. So that would be tough, perhaps, but nevertheless could be achievable. And then more mundanely, perhaps after 50 years, people might think that there ought to be a 50th anniversary history of the company and the trust. And tracking down past award winners, I think, would be a worthwhile input into that. So I think that's an exercise I'd like to start on. But ideas and, of course, donations would be very welcome for that. You just need to attach a condition on your award, and it'll be 50th anniversary fund, yes please, and that would be designated for that. So in conclusion, philanthropy is in the DNA of the Livery Movement for certain. £75 million were given away in 2022. We're waiting for the numbers for 2023 to come through. And some of the companies, of course, much older than us and much wealthier than us, give away multiples of millions every year. But it is expected, as a member of the Livery, that companies do have a trust fund. They must have it now to be admitted, and they're expected to grow it and manage it in an impactful programme of charitable giving. And it ought to be considered to be in perpetuity, given the longevity of some of the companies that first were created in the Livery. We can be very proud of what we've achieved in 40 years. We've grown substantially. We've given away a lot in the process. So we're active, we're impactful, we're supporting the objects of the company in a very effective way. But I think we need to do more to spread the word of our impact and tell the story. Find those past award winners. Maybe some of them will be highly influential, potential donors even. But the only downside for me is that investment returns have been flat in more recent years, through dips, as we talked about earlier. And our Livery numbers are not increasing as really we would want them to be. Revitalising the pleasure of giving to build towards the 50th anniversaries, I think, is an important message I'd like to get across. And we do make it easy for donations, and this is a snapshot from the charitable activities page on our website. So there are many ways you can click on there and donate to the trust. Declaring gift aid adds 25%. You can even give by Just Giving, or we encourage people to think about a legacy, which is a very tax efficient way to give substantial sums, especially with inheritance tax being even more of an issue than it was before the budget. Thank you for listening, and I hope thank you for giving.